Our story begins in what is known as the biggest little city in the world, Reno, Nevada. Friday, August 17, 2007. While Reno is known for its casinos and good times, it also boasts an academic jewel, the University of Nevada, Reno. One of the pillars of UNR's humanities program is 64-year-old professor Dr. Judy Calder. She is a specialist in substance abuse issues. She also conducts research on domestic violence and the ways in which to make communities better. Judy lives in Incline Village with her husband Jim. It's a small community off of Lake Tahoe. The couple has 3 adult daughters. They were a happy family. The only downside of living in Incline Village is Judy's 50-mile trek to work in Reno. Judy makes the commute every day down to Reno to go to her job at the university. She would sometimes stay the night at a hotel so she could be closer to campus. Friday, August 17, 2007 was going to be another late night. Judy had some meetings, so she decided to stay in Reno and not go home that weekend. Judy lucks out when a friend who won a complimentary room at the Golden Nugget Casino Hotel offers it to her. Judy's husband Jim decides to join her so they can make a fun weekend out of it. At least that was the plan, but Jim didn't end up coming with her. He had to stay back and work on a water heater that was broken at their home, so Jim told her that he would be down the next day. On Saturday morning, Jim is still stuck at home. When he calls Judy, there's no answer. It's 3 in the afternoon and Jim still hasn't been able to get a hold of Judy, so he drove to the Nugget Hotel. When he went into the hotel room, he found all of her medications still in the room. This seems strange because Judy's a diabetic and the medication that she needs every day was left behind. That was when Jim got worried and contacted the police. Jim said that Judy was a very responsible person. This was absolutely out of character for her. College professors normally don't just up and vanish and cut off all contact with their family members. Investigators hope the extensive security camera footage from the Golden Nugget will help jumpstart their search for Judy. They find footage of her on the casino floor going down a set of escalators. The video has a timestamp of 10:30 a.m. The following day, Saturday, August 14th, Judy is spotted again as she gets into her vehicle by herself and leaves the Nugget. Detectives were hoping that Judy might have just returned to work, so they contacted the UNR Police Department and asked them to check her workplace. They asked university police to check for any door records indicating that she had let herself in or out, or for any surveillance footage of her coming or going. They couldn't find any videos or logged entries after she was reported missing. Investigators' next focus is on finding Judy's vehicle. They immediately put out an alert for the car and quickly get a hit. The vehicle was found near the intersection of 5th and Evans, which is not too far from the university. The 500 block of Evans is not somewhere that Judy Calder would have frequented. That area is known for drugs, prostitution, and other criminal activity. Crime scene technicians dusted the outside of Judy's car for fingerprints, and as they were doing that around the driver's door handle, they could tell that somebody had wiped the handle with a wet cloth. Detectives said that changed the game. It was a deliberate act to conceal evidence, so they knew they had more on their hands than a missing person. Police began canvassing the neighborhood, hoping to find someone who might have seen Judy's car arrive in the area. Some of the people officers speak with say they saw a dark-skinned male driving Judy's car. Detectives circle back to Jim, Judy's husband. They ask him if he knew of anybody that would want to hurt Judy, if she had any enemies at work or any enemies in the community. He told them no, absolutely not. But Judy's daughter Kim tells police that might not be so. She tells detectives about an alarming incident the previous year. Kim told detectives that someone had attacked Judy in her garage. She was begging the man to not hurt her or kill her. It was a violent attack. The man attempted to cover her mouth and subdue her, but she was ultimately able to fight him off. Her attacker said to her, "Somebody at the university wants you dead." The attack had gone unsolved, and so investigators thought the same person might be involved in Judy's disappearance. The detectives can find no immediate leads in the earlier attack. As they look into it, they expand the investigation, seeking anyone who might have known Judy was staying in Reno that weekend. From Jim, detectives learn of a man named Ricky Barge. He's an associate of Jim and Judy's and was the one who had gotten her the hotel room at the Nugget Hotel. Ricky owned a printing shop called Imaging Technologies. Ricky's business had done some work for the university, which is where he had met Judy. Over the years, the two struck up a friendship. Ricky and Jim Calder had even become business partners in Ricky's printing business. Ricky knew that Judy was missing because he had been driving Jim around town because Jim was distraught and no longer drove well due to his age. so Ricky took Jim under his wing during his time to help him out, since his wife was missing. Ricky seemed very distraught and upset. He was very open about how much he cared for Judy and Jim. He said that he enjoyed helping them and that they had been good business partners. Investigators asked Ricky if he can think of anyone who might have seen Judy or be able to offer any additional information. Ricky told them about a guy who did casual labor for him named Carlos. Ricky hired Carlos for casual labor jobs around his warehouse, sweeping, cleaning, and sometimes delivering stuff. Carlos made some deliveries for him at the university, so he could have come into contact with Judy. He described Carlos to them, and that physical description was consistent with the person seen driving Judy's car. But Ricky can't offer the police much help in finding Carlos. He didn't know where Carlos lived. He knew that he hung around the casinos, but didn't know what his last name was or his phone number. Carlos would just show up at the warehouse and ask Ricky if he had any work for him. Wondering if Carlos had a criminal record, the detectives decide to check recent rap sheets. The hunch pays off when they come across a man named Carlos Filomeno. They were able to identify him by showing his picture to Ricky. Carlos had an active probation warrant. He was a property crime suspect. He had outstanding charges of burglary and check fraud. Finding Carlos and looking for a connection between him and Judy's disappearance is the detectives' top priority. It's been more than a week since Judy Calder vanished, and police had little to no information to share with her loved ones. On August 28th, 10 days after Judy Calder was reported missing, the Elko County Sheriff's Department responded to a call from two hunters just outside of Jackpot, Nevada. They found green sandals poking out of the ground. With a closer look, the shoes led to a body buried in the sand. The hunters scrambled back to their car to call the police. When the police arrived on the scene, they found the body of an adult female. Because of the level of decomposition, alternative means of identification were required. Crime scene technicians took pictures of the scene and searched for evidence. They recovered the victim's clothing and found a set of tire tracks near the body. Once Judy was reported missing, Reno police shared her description with all of the agencies in Nevada. The victim was wearing a pantsuit and green sandals. This is consistent with what Judy was known to wear, so detectives in Reno reach out to Elko County, where the body was discovered. The body is carefully removed from the shallow grave and transported to the Nevada State Medical Examiner for an autopsy. Through dental records, the body was confirmed to be Judy Calder. From the decomposition rate, the medical examiner calculates that Judy was likely killed and buried in the desert on the same day she went missing. Washoe County's forensic unit confirmed that it was a homicide by stabbing. She was stabbed multiple times. Back in Reno, detectives compare the tire tracks found near Judy's body to the vehicles of family and friends of Judy. However, none of the vehicles matched the tire impressions. With nothing to go on from the crime scene, detectives begin to take a closer look at people in Judy's life. Their first stop is her husband Jim, who was supposed to be with Judy the day she disappeared, but stayed home because of a water heater leak. Detectives were able to confirm Jim's alibi, as the water leak repairman said that he had not left the Incline Village area until 3 in the afternoon. Detectives also redouble their efforts to find Carlos Filomeno and connect him to Judy's disappearance. Detectives tried to match the tire tracks to the vehicles associated with imaging technologies, including the van that was used by Carlos for deliveries, but the tire imprints from Elko County did not match the van. As they examine the delivery van, the detectives do notice something odd. Upon opening the front passenger door of the van, a detective noticed that the inside was clean and smelled like bleach. The investigators swabbed the interior of the van and found traces of human blood. The blood traces set off alarms and intensified the detectives' suspicions about Carlos. But one thing isn't making sense. If Carlos is responsible, what caused him to escalate from petty crime to murder? And how did this man become involved with Judy Calder? Investigators need to find Carlos Filomeno and interview him. One of the detectives has a family member that is familiar with Carlos. The family member told the detective that Carlos's mother frequented a local casino almost every day. Detectives head to Harrah's casino hoping that Carlos might pay a visit to his mother. Within an hour, they caught him coming down a set of escalators and they grabbed him on his probation warrant. 2 days after the discovery of Judy's body, detectives face off with Carlos Filomeno. Carlos initially seemed like he was unwilling to share any information with the detectives. They asked him specifically if he knew Judy, and he said no, I don't know Judy. So they asked him if he knew Jim. Carlos says, oh, yeah, Jim works at the warehouse with Ricky. This went on for quite a while, but as the interview unfolded, More and more started to come out from Carlos. He tells detectives that he did know Judy. He said that he had seen her before at the imaging technologies warehouse. They explained to Carlos that Judy was missing and something happened to her. As the questioning continued, the detectives noticed that Carlos became more and more nervous. He was visibly shaking.
How about when she was stabbed? Did you hold her or touch her at all? Is your DNA going to be on her, Carlos?
No, I'm not a bad person. You know, I don't kill people.
I'm not trying to suggest you at all that you stabbed her. Okay.
I wouldn't do that.
Eventually, he tells the detective, "I saw him do it." The detective said, "You saw what?" Carlos responded, "I saw him stab her." The detectives ask, "You saw who stab her?" Carlos says, "Ricky, I saw him stab Judy."
He asked me to kill her, but I didn't do it.
No, you didn't stab anybody in the back.
No, sir. When I turned around, I see him stabbing.
According to Carlos, Ricky revealed that Judy had loaned him a lot of money and that he couldn't pay her back. And that's when Ricky informed him of his plan to murder Judith Calder. Ricky gave Carlos money to go to Walmart and purchase items, specifically the knife and clothing to wear during the murder for both of them.
Did he describe the type of knife that he wanted you to purchase?
Let me speak.
Carlos claims Ricky lured Judy to his warehouse with the promise of repaying his loan. Carlos said that he had watched Ricky murder Judy, and he was afraid for his own safety. He thought that he had to cooperate with Ricky or he was going to end up like Judy. So Carlos said that they had placed her body in a plastic-lined box, put it in the back of the van, and drove it up to Elko County. After burying Judy in the desert sand, Carlos claims the pair drove the company vans south to Arizona and began destroying evidence of the crime. Carlos said that they had the tires on the van changed in Phoenix, and on the way back they discarded the tires along the highway. This could be the reason why the imaging technology's van's tires didn't match the tire impressions. But it's not lost on detectives that Carlos has gone to great lengths to separate himself from the murder. With the way he was able to describe the crime scene and the manner of the way Judy was murdered in such great detail, it cannot be discounted that Carlos was guilty of it himself. To get to the truth, detectives' next step is to hear from what Judy's friend Ricky Barge has to say. But when they arrive at his house, they discover that he has left town. His wife Rose told them that he was away on business and could not be reached. It's suspicious timing, to say the least. As detectives continue to look into Carlos's story, their suspicions grow. They were able to find video evidence of both Ricky and Carlos in Walmart. Carlos was given money from Ricky so that Carlos would make the purchase, but Ricky was seen in Walmart with Carlos. The video seems to confirm Carlos's story that Ricky was involved, but police still can't find Ricky. Detectives learn that Ricky had rented a vehicle from one of the local rental car agencies. The vehicle was recovered in San Antonio, Texas, near the airport. There was a note inside the car. It said that he was going to Canada, but being so far south, less than 150 miles from the Mexican border, likely meant that he was headed to Mexico instead. It's clear to detectives that Ricky Barge is on the run. When the news reaches Judy's family, they are shocked. Excluding Jim, they had no idea who Ricky Barge was, and believed that justice for Judy was slipping away. With an international manhunt now underway, detectives head to Ricky's business, Imaging Technologies, to see if they can determine if it was indeed the scene of a murder as Carlos claims. A luminol test was administered. Luminol will react with blood and produce a blue light when in the correct lighting. The luminol activated in the area where Carlos said the altercation occurred. There were big swirls on the floor where blood had been mopped up. Swabs were collected in that area, taken to the lab, and tested. The swabs matched the DNA profile of Judith Calder, and when test results from the blood traces found in Ricky's delivery van come in, they are also a match for Judy. Everything at this point is pointing to Carlos and Ricky being involved somehow or another with the murder. But as detectives search Ricky Barge's warehouse and office, the mystery deepens and another possible suspect emerges. One name on the paperwork found in Ricky's office kept coming up. The name was Mohammed Kamaluddin. Detectives find a document that indicated that Judy had signed an agreement to loan Kamaluddin about $150,000 for the start of a new business. But who is Mohammed Kamaluddin? A background check reveals a surprising answer when motor vehicle records leads detectives to Texas. Detectives figure out that Mohammed Kamaluddin was actually Ricky Barge. The real Ricky Barge turned out to be a homeless person in the state of Texas, and Mohammed Kamaluddin had stolen his identity and had been using it for several years. and police learn that's not the only secret he was keeping. Investigators learn that there were several casinos throughout town where Ricky was a regular, and he owed some of them between $30,000 and $60,000. He had taken the money from the Calders with the intention of incorporating them into a business, and really all he did was gamble with it. As detectives dig deeper into Muhammad Kamaluddin's history, they begin uncovering even darker secrets from his past. Kamaluddin was wanted for a 1993 murder in Canada. He had convinced a 17-year-old to kill a successful businessman in order to steal the $30,000 ring the man was wearing. The victim was stabbed in the neck and bled to death. After the murder, when Kamaluddin got a hold of the ring, he fled the country. At this point, detectives had enough to obtain an arrest warrant for Ricky Barge, aka Muhammad Kamaluddin. Investigators know it's likely that he's fled the country, so they notify airlines, embassies, and international law enforcement about their fugitive. On September 4th, Ricky, Muhammad Kamaluddin, went into the British consulate in Mexico seeking transportation to another country. On his way out of the consulate, Mexico City FBI agents arrested him as he was walking down the steps. News of his arrest comes as a relief for Judy's friends and family. On January 24, 2008, 4 months after the discovery of Judy Calder's body in the Nevada desert, Muhammad Kamaluddin was extradited from Mexico to the US to face charges of first-degree murder. He insists that he's innocent.
I was waiting at the door. I start walking to her to the back of the building. Before she takes a turn, Carlos clash with her straight in. I know he stabbed her in her chest, somewhere here, because she walks into him. She makes a little noise.
And what was that noise?
Ha! Something like that.
But when detectives press him on what possible motive Carlos Filomeno could have had for killing Judy, Muhammad suddenly and shockingly changes his story. He now admits to killing Judy himself, but claims he was hired.
Jim asked me to do something. I did it. I have no motive. I have no motive to kill Judy. Jim is the one who won that done. The money was paid by Jim. The deal was $50,000.
He tells the stunned investigators that Judy and her husband were not the happy couple they appeared to be. Kamaluddin told investigators that he believed Jim's motive to want to have Judy killed was because of a will between Jim's adult children. They had 2 daughters from Jim's prior marriage, and they also had 1 daughter together. There was a dispute about whether or not they should leave their money to their 3rd daughter. Ricky claimed that they couldn't come to an agreement, and so Jim asked him to kill her. Ricky told the detectives that he had helped set up the attack on Judy the year prior. He had hired someone to attack her and kill her at her home. After that attack failed, he claims, Jim hired him to try again. Detectives can't ignore the stunning accusation, and as they take another look at the evidence, they spot some troubling details. When Kamaluddin left the area, Jim rented him a car. Kamaluddin was the prime suspect, and Jim was basically treating him like a business associate and was still willing to do things for him. They found it kind of odd that he wasn't trying to distance himself from Kamaluddin. As detectives struggle to untangle the mess of accusations, a call comes in from the state crime lab. Computer techs gained access to a drive of surveillance footage from the imaging technologies warehouse. Detectives are hopeful it'll show exactly what happened to Judy Calder. Interior video surveillance from the warehouse confirmed that Carlos and Ricky were there on the day Judy was killed. When the footage reached a certain time, it stopped, and then began recording again 2 hours later.
The video in your warehouse, it was turned off. At the time that she was killed, it was turned off.
Although video evidence of the murder itself seems to have been wiped from the tape, the timing of the missing footage and what it suggests about Judy's time of death seems to confirm Jim's alibi. Jim was in Incline Village at the time of Judy's murder on Saturday, but that doesn't rule out the possibility that he was paid to have Judy killed. And as the detectives watch more of the surveillance video, the footage shows something chilling. The video surveillance showed that Jim showed up in the warehouse and looked into the van, where Judy's body was in a box. It appeared like he was checking to make sure she was dead. Why would Ricky, who just murdered his wife, show him the location of her body? And why would Jim have any interest? Although Jim can prove he was at home with a water heater repairman at the time police believe Judy was murdered, he still finds himself facing very uncomfortable questions from the police.
I'm innocent of anything to do with this goddamn thing. Well, would you take a polygraph real quickly? Oh, I did a good guy. Excuse me. No, not at all, Jim. We're not accusing you. We just want to do a thorough job, and that thorough job is for Judy.
To investigators' frustration, the polygraph is inconclusive. Detectives interview Carlos again. They ask him if Jim had any role in the murder. He said no. Then why, the detectives ask, is Jim seen on surveillance video at the crime scene after reporting his wife missing? Carlos tells them that after they had loaded Judy's body into the box and put that box into the van, they had put a couple more boxes of printer parts in the back of the van. And a short time later, Jim showed up at the warehouse asking if they'd heard from Judy. Ricky takes Jim over to the van where Judy's body is and shows him the other boxes. It became clear to investigators that Kamaldeen was the only one accusing Jim of paying to kill his wife. And there was no further evidence to implicate or even enough to consider charging Jim for being complicit in his wife's murder. Once Jim is cleared, prosecutors begin preparing the murder trial of Mohammed Kamaldeen with Carlos Filomeno as the star witness. If Carlos was a suspect in the case, they couldn't use his statement against Ricky, so Carlos was never charged with anything in regard to this case. He was the only witness to the murder. In October 2008, the trial began. Prosecutors told the jury that Mohammed Kamaldeen, calling himself Ricky Barge, killed his friend Judith Calder and then concocted a scheme to lay the blame on everyone around him, from his accomplice Carlos to Judy's husband Jim. The prosecution said that it was a murder committed over financial hardship. There was tension between Judy and Ricky over a loan that Ricky hadn't paid back. It came down to money and a gambling problem and a man who felt like he didn't owe anybody anything. Prosecutors describe how Mohammed lured Judy by claiming he was ready to repay his loan. Ricky and Carlos had gone so far as to buy the murder weapon and specific clothing. When she entered the warehouse with the intention of collecting money that she was owed, she was stabbed twice and died fairly quickly. Her body was then placed in a box that was lined with plastic and then put inside of the work van. Her body was then dumped in northeastern Nevada, out in the middle of nowhere. Nevada is a huge state, so they wanted to take her far away from the crime scene in the hopes that she would never be found. Mohammed Kamaldeen's lawyers stick to his claim that Jim Calder masterminded his wife's murder. After 6 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 5 hours. Kamaldeen was found guilty of the murder of Judy Calder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The conviction comes as a relief to Judy Calder's loved ones and friends, but they know that the loss of Judy is a scar that will never heal.